Let's call her Pigtails. She was 5 and so was I. She said, do you want to come and play? And yeah, I really wanted to, but I just couldn't say, because even at 5, all my words got buried in my chest, and when I tried to dig them up, they made me fight for breath. And then this curly head with Velcro shoes, because she couldn't tie her laces, she said, leave her. She never speaks. And she started pulling faces. And so off they went with their skipping ropes, and I watched them jump to the beat of a song, and I managed to stammer, yeah, I want to play. But it was too late. They were gone. I think I stammered because my father drank. And some of you may well be thinking, Asher, so did my own, but statistics tell me that there will be people in this Zoom who understand exactly what I mean when I say my father drank. My father drank the meals we should have eaten and the clothes we should have had on our backs. My father drank Christmases and birthdays and every last penny of my first Holy Communion money. My father drank so he could no longer keep his demons in check, and he would say and do unthinkable things that he could never remember and we could never forget. My father drank. He would get his brew on a Monday, leave my mother's housekeeping on the second-hand kitchen table because God forbid that he should place it in her hand. On Wednesday, he would ask for half of a back. On Friday, he would ask for the second half. On Saturday, he would raid our piggy banks, and on Sunday, he would owe half the bar a pint. My father drank. As an adult looking back, I can only conclude that my mother raised us on air, but he would leave the house at 11 on a Saturday. By lunchtime, the walls of the house had begun to breathe. By mid-afternoon, we had begun to breathe with it. My mother would pull out the record player housed in a bright orange case, and we would play the Kinks and the Beatles and Elvis Presley. My sister and I would sing, "When I'm 64," so loud our throats scratched. We would put on fluffy slippers. The window slid on the tiled kitchen floor. God bless my mother. She did her best to teach us to jive. My mother bought cardigans from jumble sales. She would rip out the wool and save the buttons, which meant that we had the best button box in the whole of our street. She would reknit the wool into 10-centimetre squares. On Saturday afternoons, we would lay them on the tiled kitchen floor because later she would stitch them to make blankets for our beds. My mother ran the bath at 6:30. My sister and I sat in each other's grime. We washed our hair in this rank brown liquid called polytar that my mother got free from the chemist because my brother had eczema. 7 o'clock found us sat in front of a coal fire as my mother wielded a fine metal comb through damp hair, root to tip, in search of nits that she never found. And we would watch Morecambe and Wise, drink ginger cordial from wine glasses, eat heart-shaped sandwiches made with a cookie cutter, and sliced oranges sprinkled with sugar. My mother would watch Morecambe and Wise and read a Mills and Boone and drink a cup of coffee, smoke Players number 6 and 6-hour blankets all at the same time. At 6 and 8 years old, we had heard the battles that went on in our home. My father's words were already planted in my mind like primed grenades, and the wounds he inflicted on my mother were already teaching me. Hold fire, lie low. But we had not yet seen the war, not yet been in the trenches, but in the war in which we were raised, my mother made pockets. Pockets where calloused hands on damp hair canned the storms within us, where fluffy slippers became blue suede shoes, where heart-shaped sandwiches were quite literally the best things in sliced bread. and where knitted squares of wool became more precious than rubies, more valuable than diamonds, and later she would drape these squares around our shoulders, say, night, night, close your eyes, my shut tight. And we would close our eyes shut tight, and we would wait on the war, because at 6 years old, I was already afraid of him. In his presence, these tiny explosions of fear caused chaos in my thoughts, a stammer in my speech, and an awkwardness that delighted his cruelty no end. At 8 years old, I could tell how drunk he was by the pace of his footsteps on the path, how angry by the sound of his breath, and I would lie stock still and listen through my skin, wince at every slap, every toxic word he spewed, the air peppered with foul language, my head filled with scenes I did not want to see. At 11 years old, I knew that my call was a cup slammed 3 times against a table. I would rise from my bed, head racing, limbs heavy, and I would sit ramrod straight all night long sometimes. Wait for the mind games to end and the slaps and the punches to begin, and I would imagine shooting lasers of hate at him, cartoon villain style. In my head I watched him shrivel and beg for mercy that never came. At 14, I met my English teacher, Mrs. Harvey. Oh, Miss Harvey, for you I did my homework on the bus. Now, let me be clear. I did not do school. School days were spent at home recovering, healing from wounds inflicted by my father, while my mother, wounded herself and complicit in the lie, would write on notepaper gifted to her every year for her birthday, "Dear teacher, please excuse my daughter's absence from school. She has been taking care of me as I have been unwell. Yours sincerely." But those letters were never dated, never specific, which meant that a week off to let bruising turn from purple to brown to green to yellow to shadow could be extended by me to a life for long walks in parks, trips into Belfast city centre, and an unbelievably skilled waste of time. On the first day of 3rd year, you stood at the top of the room in my English lesson, and you were smaller than all of us. 23, 24 years old, perhaps. I remember thinking that you dressed like my gran. "Read the next paragraph," you said to me. And the sniggering started instantly. I brushed my fringe from my eyes. I locked my gaze on you, and every part of me sent you a silent message. "Please, miss, do not make me read." You see, back then, my consonants still multiplied, my vowels just disappeared, and syllables had edges, and paragraphs meant tears. I sent it again. "Please, miss, do not make me read." I held my breath, and the nod, when it came, was almost imperceptible, and followed by, "Tracy Cassidy, read the next paragraph." I breathed out. "And you set us homework." Now, I had never done homework when your home is dangerous, when every part of your being is focused on not being hurled against a wall or trying to process hours of verbal abuse. Homework simply cannot happen. But for you, Miss Harvey, I did my homework on the bus. In other subjects, I was at best disengaged, at worst disruptive, and letters were sent home to my mother, but she had other things on her mind. But even on the days when I missed, I would stride into English 11 a.m. Mondays and Thursdays with the untouchable swagger of Al Capone, and you would read my workout to the class, these bright red A's accompanied by smiles and affirmations, until one day the homework wasn't worthy of a bright red A. The cup had been slammed 3 times against the table at 2 a.m., calling me from my bed, and 6 hours of shaming and berating and humiliation had followed. So The essay on the bus was virtually incoherent. God, looking back now, I can see that you tried to be so kind, placing it on my desk with the D facing down. Now, I know that you can do better than that. You smiled. But at 14, I heard criticism, rejection, betrayal, even. The sense of exposure was brutal because suddenly you could see all that my father could see. I couldn't look at you. The following Thursday, with her turned to defiance, I sat at the back and glared at you until you reddened. I handed in the homework. And the following Monday, you kept me back after class. I stood, face aflame, eyes blistering from biting back tears, and I can still see you now. Hands clasped, crouching so low that your face looked up into mine, that dimple on your chin like the press of a thumb. I was so disappointed not to get homework from you. Do you know I keep yours to the end? When I've read all the rest, I put the kettle on, sit down and read yours. I was so disappointed it wasn't when it wasn't there last night. And I remember the swell in my chest and the rush of something warm from my feet to my forehead, fighting back the smile and feeling like I would tell you the truth in that moment, but you didn't know that you should ask. You're so smart, you said. You can do anything you want. But my insides were stuffed full of my father's words. Backward, retard. You can't string two words together, so there was no room for your words at that time. In his absence, we didn't speak of it. The secret pushing at the walls of our house, making it impossible to breathe. My mother rocking in the corner, long since lost all sense of self and function, so it continued. His games, his rules, his hell. At 15, I slept through my call, was torn from my bed by my hair and carried down the stairs, limbs flailing. I would not cry. Within moments, the violence was over. No mind games. There has never been a sweeter lesson. I became manipulative, provocative, divisive. And within moments they would come. Blow after blessed blow, the violent sweet shock, a momentary respite from the necrotic wounds caused by his words. This was my game now. These were my rules. And I had learned from a master. 20, I fought back. Verbally at first, then physically, then the night that changed everything. A mantle clock grabbed in my defense, and a poker grabbed in his. That lanced my side, this inky, licking puddle that soothed me but made him flee. And later in the hospital, all I remember is that I wasn't wearing shoes. There hadn't been time to think. Once the ambulance came, they'd strapped me onto a stretcher like an invalid. Curled in the couch of accident and emergency, I reread the posters on the prison grey walls. Hardest spot, sepsis. Which service should you use? 7-step hand washing technique. So I didn't hear the nurse come in. I jumped when she spoke. I'm Laura. I'm one of the triage nurses, she said. So we're just going to get you cleaned up and have a chat. Okay? She washed her hands. 7 steps, I noted. Opened up dressings onto a shiny silver trolley. Now let's have a look then, she said. She removed the blood-soaked pad from my side and it smelt like rust. I kept my eyes on the door because my dad would obliterate this room in seconds. That shiny silver trolley would ricochet off every wall, and Nurse Laura and I too. I felt my thoughts unravel like threads, weave themselves back together to sit like cotton on my chest. Are you going to tell me how this happened? And I shook my head hard. I didn't look at her. I just kept thinking if I didn't look at her, this wasn't really happening. I counted the tiles on the floor and I studied the speckled pattern till it blurred. You're not going to tell me? Okay, she said. Let me tell you what I know. And she tiptoed around the words as if they were made of glass. This right here. And she pointed to the wound just below my ribs. This is a puncture wound. So someone has done this to you. They've stuck something in you. And I could see it then. The hook of the poker glinting in the light just before it hit me. Now, it wasn't always as physical as that, but I preferred the blows to the peppering of words. So someone has committed a crime here, and they really shouldn't get away with it. That careful voice, the way she set the words down gently and she moved around and searched my face. Oh, and those, she said, pointing to the marks just below my left eye, those are old bruises. So someone has hurt you before. Am I right? My dad. The voice was so small I wondered who it belonged to. I searched the room for its owner. I realised with terror it was mine. I had broken the code. I had told someone. I was 20 years old. I had never told anyone. Wait, did you just say your dad did this? And her fear sounded the same as mine, an octave higher than normal. Just stay there. I just need to speak to someone else. And she backed towards the door. I felt the room spin. I realised my mistake. Jesus, don't, I said. Don't tell anyone, just stitch me up. You don't understand. You see, I need to get back. I need to get back before I realise that I've gone. But she was on her knees now. You don't have to go back. Let me help you. We can get you somewhere safe. And she was holding my hands and hers were cold. The way that mine were. When everything in me went to my core, when peripherals weren't needed to survive in the moment. Please, let me help you. And tears were splashing onto her wrists. I realised she was crying too. I found myself nodding. I felt the cotton lift from my chest. I heard myself breathe again. You can really help me? Disbelief made the words feel like blades. All I have to do is tell you, and you can keep me safe. And she waited until I looked at her before she answered. Eyes hazel, lashes fat with tears. Yes, love, she said. We can keep you safe. And she tried. She really did. But there wasn't any room at women's refuges, so safe became a hostel, full of drunk middle-aged men when I had just ran from a drunk middle-aged man. So I took to the streets and it was tough, so I got tough. I grew edges and spikes. I learned to fight. Now it's November. And Belfast is Baltic. But the Christmas shoppers are out in force already. And my doorway stinks the night of urine and whiskey and unknown things. I pull my scarf up over my nose against the stench. I focus on breathing through my mouth and watching shoppers who think they're cold because they have to walk 10 minutes from the shopping centre to their air-conditioned 4x4. But trust me, they have never been cold. I mean, so cold that your bones turn to steel, soldered together at the joints, making the slightest movement impossible. I mean, so cold that you don't drink after 4 o'clock. The thought of getting out of your sleeping bag at night for a wee makes you cry. Real, actual tears. A lady bought me a coffee earlier. Nice enough, I suppose, until she said, I didn't want to give you money, love, in case you drank it. And the last time I drank out here was my first week, when I couldn't sleep. I woke up with a strange man's hands in my places and spaces. I have not drank since. When I told Kelly, she gave me 8 nappy pins. He only groped me, I told her. I'm not pregnant. No, she said. And she pressed them into my palm. You fasten your t-shirt to your knickers, then your jumper to your jeans, then your coat to everything. It'll give you time to scream, Danielle. Or if I know you, time to fight. A man crouches down and puts a pound in my dish. Have you no people, love? And I almost answer him. Almost. I've had people all my life. Caseworker people. And social worker people. I had a chance to have people once. When I was 12, I went to stay with a lady called Sally and her 3 daughters. And Sally loved hard. She made you your breakfast, sandwiches for school and dinner. She washed all your clothes, Chris. She ran you a bath, but I had no idea how to react to that. Where was the temper? Where was the snap that I was used to? I did not trust her, so I decided I would expose her. You see, in my world, nobody was that kind. Not really. So I lied. I stole. I cursed. And I talked back. And when that didn't work, I went to her weakness. I went after her kids. And the day that she saw me hit her youngest, she stood with her mouth open like a wound, but she still didn't snap. She sat me down a few days later, though. And she said she was sorry. Jesus. She was sorry. She said she'd tried really hard, but that it was best for everyone if I didn't stay. She took my face in her hands and she kissed me on the forehead and she said, someday, Danielle, you're going to have to let somebody love you. And the way that she looked at me, God, that look, it was like standing in the full heat of the sun. Arms stretched wide, head back, eyes closed, letting the warmth fill all your spaces, right to the edges so there's no gaps left in that. That was my chance to have people. And I blew it. It's freezing out here tonight. There's a lady coming towards me now with a North Face jacket and this Radley bag held just so, and she looks like she can afford it, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask her for change. I've been out here 4 months. I've never asked. But there's £1.34 in my dish and it's 10 o'clock at night, so this is it. I'm a real life beggar now. I can fall no further. I've watched others do this so many times. Can you spare some change? Can you spare some change? Can you spare some change? Becoming more invisible with each plea, so now it's my turn. No shame, no gain. But just as I'm about to speak, she looks at me with utter disgust and says, no change. And I can't help it. Humiliation explodes inside me. I never asked you, you stuck-up cow. I hunker down inside my sleeping bag. I check my nappy pins are in place and I close my eyes. I hear somebody call my name, but I stay where I am. There must be 1,000 Danielles. Somebody grabs my foot through my sleeping bag and shakes it. And I'm back there with Sally, shaking my foot through the duvet. Come on, Danielle. You're going to be late for school, love. And the memory wins me like a punch. I tell myself it can't be, but I want it to be. God, so bad. I don't breathe in case I break the spell. I peer over my sleeping bag. and her brown hair is salted at the root. She has these wrinkles on her cheeks as intricate as spiders' webs. But it's my Sally, all right. Because as she looks at me, I swear, I can feel the heat of the sun. Thank you, David.